The Outlanders Journey. Tier 1, Level 3. Chapter 2. Maya Lee. You can sense the presence of wild magic. As soon as you set one foot into the forest, its latent energy immediately latched onto you, pulling you down with a heavy weight. You've forgotten how sticky it feels on your skin. In some ways, you've grown to miss its companionship. It's almost like a signal that home is within reach. Your stomach is full for the first time in days. The mood inside this strange house is cautiously optimistic and yet passively resentful. Laurel is staring blankly at the floor, mouthing under his breath in the way he always does when he's in deep thought, planning 10 steps ahead of everyone else. You saw the way he reacted to the discussion of the Feywild, and it reminded you of the other wood elves, of home. There, the mere mention of the name alone could silence a room. Your father, pleading to spare you. Go! Your father's hands shoving you. Go! Don't look back until you find her. I'm right behind you. You hear the rhythmic stomping of feet, and you're jolted back to the present. Lasha is leading the orcs through prayer. They break into song, holding hands and swaying in unison, tears rolling down their faces. You know each of them by heart now, even if not by name. You've watched all of them at night and learned who snores, who cries, who talks, who shifts around. Each of them has lost a part of themselves from the day everyone was ambushed. Sometimes you'll hear them whispering softly to each other, and though you can't understand the language, you know, deep down, that they're wondering the same thing as you. How do you go to a place that does not welcome you? The song swells to a climactic peak, and the tides of wild magic shift in response, like they're listening. Now that you don't need to put up a magical disguise, you've managed to avoid triggering any more unwanted effects. This curse you wanted only to get rid of, it's now the only thing you have that still connects you to where you came from. You're so close to finding Ihi now. It's like the wild magic is guiding you to her. When you finally meet her, you can finally ask her to cut your ties to this curse. You'll be normal for once, and you'll be able to go home, where you won't cause any more problems, and you'll be able to live with them peacefully forever. Your father promised as much. Night comes, and everyone else prepares to sleep. You don't dislike this time as much as you once did. You've grown used to the loneliness. It's a time now to observe and listen. Mok begins to rub Duara's feet, which you find sad but touching, because that was something you saw Ernog do for her every evening, in secret. You're not sure if Mok realizes he still has this innate bond with his brother. Dura stares at Mok with a mix of both guilt and admiration. Her belly is starting to show. Ark approaches Ulur, extending a hand. She hesitates for a second, but then she scoots out of the way to let him sit. He bows his head and squats next to her. He whispers into her ear as she nods. Then, touching the discolored purple scar on her neck, he closes his eyes and mutters a little prayer. The wound glows, and sparks of fire sear away the scar tissue before it peels off and disintegrates into dust. The air thickens. There's a shift in the weave. Everyone else seems to notice it too, because they all stop and stare at the two of them. Allur's eyes widen, and she touches her neck, running her fingers across the newly smoothed skin. She bursts into tears, weeping quietly her brother's name. At the same time, Laurel is going around and offering to prestidigitate everyone. Some accept his offer, while some still refuse, eyeing him with suspicion. To which he only nods politely and continues on to the next person. Each time he casts the spell, a little flash of light appears, and the flecks of dirt and mud vanish without a trace. When he reaches Errol, he pauses for just a moment, avoiding eye contact, and then moves on to the next person. You notice the thick layer of dried mud coating her boots and running up her calves. Lily, says Bach, tapping your shoulder. You turn to find him untying the laces around your bedroll. You should sleep soon. I don't really sleep, remember? You say. Oh. He scratches his head. Oh, yeah, but you do a little, right? A little. I'm not that tired, though. Maybe you should still rest a little. Bach yawns, and a little tear forms from the corner of his eye. He has large, kind eyes. When he smiles big, a little dimple forms on his left side. You often feel the urge to poke it. You nod. Okay. You crawl on top of your bedroll and slip off your shoes. You wiggle your toes. Bach? Yeah? When we get to Ihi, are you going to ask her to take away your wild magic? He blinks. She can do that? That's what my dad told me. That's why we went to go see her. Oh, says Bach. I thought she could teach me how to control my wild magic. You nod. She can do anything for you. I don't know. I was only thinking about seeing Mama again. You sit on your knees and lean in closer to him. But what if you could be with Mama and you don't have to have wild magic anymore? Would you do it? You've mulled it over, night after night, all the different ways to keep the three of you together. It was Aled's revelation that the Furbolgs moved to the east that turned your hope into a truly possible reality. Your people and the Furbolgs living together, or at least live close by, and you'll be able to see them every day. Forever. He scratches his head again, scrunching his face as he goes into deep thought. Will it hurt? What are you two troublemakers talking about now? You hear Laurel say as he scoots himself next to Bach. He pats you on the head. Oh, fuck, Lily, your feet stink. He waves his hand dramatically as he scrunches his nose. You kick him in the stomach, sticking your tongue out at him. He falls back theatrically, pinching his nose as he feigns death. Then he grabs your ankle and quickly prestidigitates your feet. The sensation is a bit ticklish, and you can't help but giggle. Lily was saying Ihi can take our wild magic away if we want to, says Bach. She can do that? Says Laurel, propping himself on his elbows. You nod. She can do anything. Well, that might be an option to consider, says Laurel. Do you think it'll hurt? Says Bach. Even if it does, we won't have to deal with wild magic ever again, you say. Bach seems surprisingly hesitant. He furrows his brow and rubs his chin. I need to think about it. Laurel nods in agreement. He doesn't understand at all. What's there to think about? You say, grabbing Bach's hand. Well, hold on, says Laurel. It's his decision. But we have to stay together. You promised. A few heads turn to you, and Laurel puts a finger to his lips. He and Bach share a glance, and then they look back at you, puzzled. We're not leaving you, Lily, Laurel whispers. But if Bach doesn't get his wild magic taken, then he can't live with us. What are you talking about? Asks Laurel. If Bach doesn't let Ihi take his wild magic, then he can't be with my family, and we'll have to be apart. Laurel puts his hands on your shoulders, smiling down at you with a pitiful condescension. Every time you see it, you want to smear your dirtied hands all over his mouth. I think, whispers Laurel, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Let's get our rest tonight, all right? Ihi is still a long ways away. But, you say. Shh. He ruffles your hair. Let's stay focused on what's going on now. You turn to Bach. You promised, you whisper. He tilts his head, his eyes full of bewilderment and guilt. I didn't say I was going to leave you, Lily. We're not leaving you, says Laurel. Come here. He pulls you in for a hug, patting you mechanically on the back. After everything's said and done, we will stay together. Look at us. We've made it this far by doing just that. We're not going to break that anytime soon, all right? When he talks in that patronizing tone, the sound of buzzing insects swallows your hearing. The chaotic energy around you is rising. You inhale through your nose and out through your mouth, the way Errol does when she meditates in the morning. They told my dad I can't go back until I get rid of my wild magic. I want to go home, and I want you to come with me, and I want Bach to bring his family, and I want Laurel to stay with us as a wood elf, and I want all of us to live together forever. Bach puts his arms around you. His heavy breathing flutters the hairs on the top of your head. He begins to rock you back and forth. There, he says. That does sound nice, doesn't it? Says Laurel, and you know he's lying again. Yeah, says Bach. It does. And you realize they've already made other plans without you. Night comes for everyone else but you, as expected. There's the usual sound of snoring, but much more relaxed. The winds howl outside, rattling branches against the exterior of the building, which is itself swaying back and forth. If the tree you're in snaps in half, will Laurel wake up in time to catch your fall? He's sleeping peacefully next to Bach, one arm draped over his chest. You reach out and interlace your fingers with his. There's this sense of precious time ticking away second by second. You can sense the inner clockwork of the weave, like a constantly warping heartbeat. You stare at Laurel's face, at Bach's rising and falling chest. Did you say something wrong to them? It's not like you hate wild magic anymore. There are times when you almost want it to take hold of you. The casting of a spell, the distortion of the air. Sometimes, for a brief instant, it's as though your fingers can grasp between the seams, peel it off and sew it back together. This terrifying but exhilarating sensation. But you lose the feeling before you can even attempt it. You've weighed your options over and over. In the end, it simply makes sense not to have wild magic. Anyone would choose not to keep it if they had that choice. It will only consume you. Any belief that you can command it is pure hubris. Your people cast away the Fae for this very reason. Even the high elves that you've been taught to fear have no traces of their wild ancestry. Maybe Laurel and Bach both hate you. Maybe they're just looking for an excuse to keep you away the first chance they get, just as everyone else did. You wriggle closer to Bach, still holding Laurel's hand. You rest your head on Bach's chest, and you feel for his gentle heartbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You close your eyes, listening. Today, it is calm, and you know he's not having a nightmare again. You find it remarkable how his heart beats in perfect sync with the weave. He probably doesn't even realize it. Laurel groans, furrowing his brow. He smacks his lips and wriggles his hand out of your grasp, scratching at his chin. I'm trying, he mumbles. He and Bach spoke to each other privately a few nights ago, right after receiving his brother's gifts. Even in the dead of night, as though they knew you would eavesdrop, they spoke telepathically. Ever since then, it's like the two of them have gotten closer to each other, and you've been once again left behind. Why won't they tell you anything anymore? They hate you. They hate you, and they won't admit it to you. If they leave you behind, you'll truly have nothing. Someone shifts around before crawling out of their bedroll. You open your eyes and turn to the source, and you notice Errol tiptoeing away, careful not to step on anyone. She glances around, noticing you almost instantly, and averts her gaze as she continues moving. Next to the giant pile of crates and boxes, she plops herself back down. She crosses her legs and folds her hands together, bowing her head. You've watched her meditate before. It reminds you of the way the ancient seer used to meditate, in perfect solitude, connecting with some greater presence out there. Out of everyone you've met so far, she strikes you as the most fascinating, in the mere simplicity and futility of whatever it is that she's striving for. So dutiful, so diligent, yet unable to reach some impossible goal. She sighs in frustration after a while, opening her eyes. She shakes her head as she presses it into her hands. She massages her temples, though it doesn't seem to do much. Then she glances at you once more, this shameful look on her face, and she pulls her knees up to her chin, completely defeated. You know Laurel hates her. He's never said as much, but it's been obvious. You wonder if he's only redirecting his hatred for you by placing it onto her. It was your fault for being careless, just as it's your fault for everything you've done to make people's lives worse off. Errol stares at you curiously. She looks down at an empty spot next to her. You wave at her. She's surprised. She must have expected you to turn away or something. She bites her lower lip and forces a smile. She's much worse at faking it than Laurel. You pat your clothes in search of your wand. After finding it next to your waist, you point it at her. She flinches instinctively until you whisper a quiet message to her. Hi, what are you doing? She narrows her eyes at you. So you have the same psychic ability as your brother? You cast the spell again. Not exactly, but it's similar. What are you doing? I'm trying to meditate. Recasting again, you say, I know, but why are you doing it now? I couldn't sleep, so... What kind of meditation do? You ask. I can meditate too. There are only a few ritual prayers to the Everlight. She speaks in a matter-of-fact way, not so much terse as more awkward and nervous. Oh. You peer over at Laurel. A bit of drool is leaking out of his open mouth. Bach is completely still, aside from his rising and falling chest. You glance at Errol again. Can I do it with you? There's a pause. If you want to. You take this as your opportunity to slip away. You step toward her, and you almost trip over someone's foot. You stumble, catching yourself in time, covering your mouth with your hands. You ran into the foot of the old woman who was scared of heights. Despite the altitude, she seems to be sleeping soundly. Errol's eyes follow you as you sit down next to her. She smells surprisingly clean, like dew on a crisp morning. You notice how tidy her robes are, perfectly symmetrical and buttoned, save a few scorched edges. Despite how badly the rain soaked through her clothes, she's found a way to keep herself neat and dry. Her back is perfectly straight, and even at night, her unkempt hair seems to rest gracefully on her shoulders. Your grandmother always hated how slovenly you were, a product of your curse. You comb your frazzled hair with your fingers. It's been so long since you've had your hair brushed. After Ihi takes your wild magic, you can finally be tidy, like Errol. Why aren't you sleeping? Errol whispers. I wasn't tired, you say. Are you having trouble sleeping? You shake your head. Can you show me how you meditate? She nods. I bow my head a bit, and I recite the prayers to the Everlight. She closes her eyes, and she begins to speak in a language you don't understand. It sounds like Elvish. What are you saying? You whisper. She opens her eyes. It's a mantra. I chant it to strengthen my connection to the Everlight. It means something like, let your guiding fires light the way for my lost soul. Why do you have to call yourself a lost soul? I haven't really thought about it. It's what we're supposed to say. That sounds like how we pray to Sylvanus. You begin to sing a soft lullaby to the twin lakes of Sylvanus, the ancient tune meant to carry you into the tides of a deep trance. She stares into your eyes as she listens closely, almost entranced. You really are from the forest, aren't you? You blink. Yes? She sighs, shaking her head. I'm sorry, she says. I truly thought you and your brother were spies for New Everlon. I know. He told me. We came from there. We look like them. We disguised ourselves. It probably looks bad from your point of view. She buries her face in her hands. But you're just a little girl. You giggle. Maybe that's a disguise too. It's true then, that a new Everlonian captured you? You nod. He was. He did a lot of things to our memories. He kept us in these cages. Bach lived with him for the longest. You were all together? Yeah, we escaped together too. She lets out another heavy exhale. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. It's okay. For me, at least. Where in the forest are you from? The Northeast. Is that where you're trying to go? You shake your head. I need to meet Ihi, too. She needs to help me and Bach. Help you with what? My magic. She blinks, but she doesn't press further. You like that about her. You extend your legs, tapping your toes together. After she helps us, I want Bach to come home with me. He can bring his family and live with us in the Northeast, and maybe the nomads can live with us too. I know for a fact we have lots of space. They might not be too happy, but I think it's really selfish for them to keep the land all to themselves. Plus, they'll eventually see how nice everyone is. My dad doesn't like wolves, but I think he'll like Rock eventually. A smile creeps up on her face, and she turns and brushes a lock of hair behind your ears. Her soft fingers sent a tingle up your head and down your neck. All right, she says. Then I'll see to it that we get you to Ihi, and you can be one step closer to making your plans come true. Really? She nods. As she pulls her hand away, you notice a long red gash across her palm, winding down her wrist and extending further beneath her sleeves. You take her hand. She must have gotten rope burn from bringing all those people up. Does it hurt? You ask. It's not too bad. It'll heal on its own. Why didn't you get Ark to heal it? Other people have more critical wounds. I can ask my brother. No, it's okay. He's sleeping anyway. She sighs. I was hoping that I would be able to meditate and heal myself. Ark can apparently cure diseases with his magic now, and I still can't even do a basic healing spell. It's okay. I can't either. She smiles. That's different. You and Mock shouldn't be responsible for healing us in the first place. But I like to help. In her hands, you sense the thread of life energy that runs through every living being. It's slightly dulled, but you know that the wild magic is still, to some extent, attracted to her, as it is with any magic user. There's a blockage in her of some kind. You poke the middle of her palm, and she winces in pain. Sorry, you say. She sucks in air through her teeth. It's okay. You touched a tender spot. You sit up on your knees, letting go of her hand and grabbing her head instead. She freezes up, tensing her shoulders as she searches your eyes for reassurance. You close yours, and you listen to the ebb and flow of the weave. You can sense the shape of Errol's form before you. You touch her forehead, and you pinch at a loose thread, which is swaying on its own. You pull, and it unravels before your mind's eye. You pull, and more threads come out, dissipating as they're torn free. With your other hand, you hold Errol's head steady. You take a deep breath and yank, tearing away what seems to be miles of thread. A familiar tidal wave begins washing over you again, and as you open your eyes, you see Errol has closed hers and allowed you to take control. Her hands are folded over her lap. She kneels before you in complete submission. You scoot back, releasing your hold. She slowly opens her eyes and lifts her head. She raises her hands and closes them into fists. She furrows her brow and rotates her hands, examining them. What did you do? She asks. I feel looser. I don't know, you say, truthfully. She snorts and tries to hold back laughter. She touches one hand to the other, and you watch as a dim fire flickers to life, running down her arm, blanketing her wound. As it dies, the rope burn also disappears. Errol's eyes widen, and she stares at you. How? You shrug. I really don't know. She laughs for real this time, covering her mouth. Her shoulders are jumping, and at first, you wonder if you really did something that funny, until you realize she's crying. She covers her eyes, still sniffling. Oh, you say. You put your arms around her awkwardly. It's okay. I'm okay, she says, hugging you back. Thank you. Her embrace is comforting in its purity. You wonder if your magic has ever done something good for someone else before this moment. She pulls away, wiping her chin with her sleeve. She somehow still looks elegant, even when she's crying. You really should go to sleep. Will you keep meditating? You ask. Just a little bit longer. Can I stay until you're done? She nods. Of course. As she crosses her legs and bows her head again, she puts an arm around your shoulder, and you lean into her, closing your eyes. You can sense magic, though different in kind, flowing evenly through her body. You're warm, you say.